again, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. My name is Mars, and today we're going to be doing a comparison video between Galuf and CG Sieghard, because a lot of people I feel like have been asking the question, oh, if I have enhanced Sieghard, do I need to really bother with Galuf? And I'll spare you the details. The short answer is probably not, but in this video we're going to break down some of the cases where you might want one unit over the other. And some of you may have noticed that, hey, Mars, you didn't pull for a Galuf on your stream on Friday, and yes, that's correct. Sometimes I have really bad insomnia, and one of the things I do to preoccupy my time is play Brave Exvius, and sometimes playing Brave Exvius involves making bad financial decisions on Brave Exvius. Anyways, I did one lap on the Galuf, or I did the Galuf step up, right, after failing miserably on the X death one, and guess what? I got 2 Galufs and 2 X deaths on the Galuf step up, so, you know, that was a little bit ridiculous. Kind of wish I had had that luck on the stream, kind of wish I had decided to do it on stream, as, you know, after the fact, but you know, insomnia pulse, I'm entitled to them once in a while, and that's what it was. So, ended up with Galuf and wanted to talk about how he stacks up to Sieghard. So, before diving into their kits, I want to look real quick at their Trust Master rewards and Super Trust Master rewards. CG Sieghard has a really awesome one. Heroes About Earth is something that I use all the time. It has good defense and spirit, as well as some HP, Earth Resist, and one of my favorite bits, Limit Burst, fill percentage of 50%. So this is something that is really good on Sieghard himself, as well as pretty much any other support, even if you're not using Sieghard in battle. That extra tankiness with the LB fill rate is super handy for most characters. So that's super awesome. Sieghard's STMR, though, is something that I don't think is particularly commonly used, mostly because it occupies the shield slot. It is his attractive shield, which, if you know the Sieghard lore, has a mirror on the inside of it so that he can gaze upon his beauty in battle, basically making it, obviously, the best shield to have in the game. But it has 85 defense and 30% spirit, as well as 80% earth resist, those are some pretty fat stats, but a lot of times people are running draw attacks items in the shield slot. So for anybody but Galuf, perhaps, or CG Warrior of Light, who don't need a draw weapon in the shield slot, this is going to be something that you may not use as much for draw attacks strats. So it's good, really good, but I don't actually use it a lot. Now looking at Galuf's TMR and STMR, his TMR is his sword. I think it's good. It's a good TMR, 130 attack, 30 defense, 20% HP. Honestly, I think this is almost better suited for damage dealers, because that offers a lot of tankiness without having to sacrifice too much attack. So in my opinion, this is honestly like really solid for damage dealers, but it is Galuf's Trust Master item. So you do want to use this or his Super Trust Master reward, because his passives for having a TMR equipped are really good. I just wish it were a dagger instead, you know, because daggers with high tide and how good his limit burst is, and he can entrust others, a dagger would just be so much better than this sword, you know, if it has high tide. But you know, it is what it is, and for a sword, it is actually probably one of the tankier swords in the game, so it is good in that respect. Speaking of his Super Trust Master reward, it is Warrior from Another World, which boosts HP and defense by 40%, as well as fire and light resist by 50%, which is pretty sizable. Really good in the situations where you need the fire and light resist. Otherwise, it's just good, like not really good, just good to have that defense and HP. And more importantly, if I were to have this STMR, I would be able to equip him with a dagger, which means I could have high tide in the dagger slot, and he could get his limit burst more frequently. But you know, woe is me, we deal with what we got. Now, looking at their kits, Sieghard and Dawn Warrior, or Warrior of Dawn Galuf, are very similar. You'll see that they both have provoke abilities, they both have cover abilities, they both have some break abilities. So we're going to focus mostly on the stuff that makes them unique. Galuf and Sieghard both have limit bursts that provide damage mitigation to the party. Galuf's obviously wins in this case because it lasts for 4 turns and provides 5% higher mitigation. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at these. I mean, Sieghard definitely gets points for the prettier limit burst. Yeah, 10 out of 10 limit burst. Gorgeous, stunning, perfect, love it. Galuf's doesn't look nearly as cool. Yeah, it's kind of silly to me. I don't love it, personally. but it is better, for sure. It is better because it provides the higher amount of mitigation for an increased turn duration. So it's definitely a better limit burst than Sieghard's. It's just uglier, so, you know, take that as you will. Now, with Sieghard's, it is worth touching on Sieghard's enhanced tanking skills, his provoke and his cover, and his magic cover as well. So all three of his tank abilities that he uses primarily buff his stats by a decent amount, 130%, and it buffs resistance to being broken on those stats. So that is really, really handy to keep him buffed up and in the fight. I'm Gorgeous was also enhanced to last for 3 turns instead of 2 turns, so that's really awesome. And Super Wink, which is the magic cover, is still a cooldown skill, but the cooldown was reduced to the point that he can use it every 3 turns, which means you can have perfect uptime. Or actually, I'm misremembering. It's that the duration was increased, not the cooldown. So the duration was increased so that he can protect at all times for magic. So those are super handy. Galuf's tanking skills are slightly different. As you can see, we have his cover skill right here. It is pretty much the same. Yeah, it enables his dual cast for a couple of turns, which is nice. And then his provoke skill is this defensive blade right here. And this is something that, because Galuf is really innately draw attack heavy, you're probably not actually going to use it very much. But it is something that you can use. I believe it only gives like 25% mitigation. So it's not that good in comparison to Sieghard's, which gives 40% physical mitigation. So in terms of who has better provokes, I think Sieghard has it. But speaking of provokes, one of the things that has people most excited about Dawn Warrior Galuf is that if you look at his skills, you can see he has 50% draw attacks, and then he has Friendly Old Fighter, which gives him another 30%. Meaning he only needs 20% draw attacks in order to attract all single target provocable attacks to him. So most people are not actually even using his provoke skill, they're just using him as a draw attacks tank. And of course, you can also cover with him. One of the other things that is worth mentioning in terms of his cover and tanking skills is probably Galuf's best skill, which is Sworn Protection. This actually, I'm surprised nobody's really talked about this much. Some people have mentioned it, surely, but honest to goodness, this is probably Galuf's best skill, which is a turn 1 cooldown that you can use that enables physical cover for your entire party, boosts attack and defense, and puts up damage mitigation of 40%. So it's a really strong turn 1 buff that you can apply. It activates cover, it activates mitigation on the party. It is really, really good for turn 1 setups. That's awesome. Sieghard doesn't have anything like that, but instead what he does have is his Sexy Smile and Glorious Guard abilities. These two are really interesting, and Galuf doesn't have anything like them. They are basically your tank cooldowns, where when you use them, you take dramatically reduced damage of each type. This is really handy when you're anticipating a lot of incoming damage, which, you know, you can plan for, or maybe you're trying to recover. Like, oh, the boss isn't broken and I need to somehow survive his attacks. Maybe I'll try, you know, Glorious Guard or something like that to survive. Like, you can have some pretty clutch strategies behind that. Ultimately, it doesn't see as much use as like Galuf's cooldown skill that enables his cover and mitigation, but it is still pretty handy to have. And of course, you know, pink and hearts everywhere. Love it. Now, regarding breaks, both Galuf and Sieghard have breaks. Galuf's are only attack and defense, I believe by 60% if I remember right, and you know, that's alright. You're probably not going to use them much. Sieghard also has defense and spirit breaks of 60%, and then he has full break charm, which is a 60% full break. I can't see a lot of people using it for fights today, but you could use it on fights that are probably 6 months old or older. 60% breaks are still more than enough for those, so it is handy for him to have that as an option. So that's really, really nice. Now, looking at some of their other support skills, it is handy that Sieghard has Barstone spells. But, you know, anybody can equip Barstonga, you know, using an Esper, so that's not that big of a deal. I think one of the only other things that with Sieghard that I'll note is Dangerous Rose, which is not that impressive or amazing of an ability, but because it is Aerial Ray, you can generate a lot of limit crystals. So that's why I enhanced it, is that if I'm fighting a bunch of targets and I need some limit crystals for the party, that is one of the easiest ways to get a whole bunch of them, is to use a high number of hit attack. Now with Galuf, he has his Entrust is one thing that I think is really, really good. Of course, his Limit Burst, because you're probably going to be using that for the damage mitigation. You may not be using his Entrust very much, but it is worth noting that Galuf's Limit Burst only requires 22 crystals to fill, which is a very small amount for a 7-star Limit Burst. Like, that's very, very easy to fill. So that's something that I definitely would consider a very valuable asset for Galuf, is the ability to entrust other people. And it also boosts attack and defense for all allies. So, you know, you could do that at the same time that you entrust. Now, one of the things that some people have talked about with Galuf is his ability to imbue himself and somebody else. The way that I could see you doing this is imbuing himself and somebody else with either, you know, fire here or light here. Imbuing himself, that other person, and then using Galuf to AMOE chain with people. But that's not really my style. I don't think it's super practical, and I don't think it is the most effective way. Like, I'd rather use 2 damage dealers rather than support chainers. I don't really run finishers or dragoons very often, so, you know, that might be a case where it is more useful to use Galuf's AMOE chaining with a partner that he imbues and imperils for. Because these cooldowns do also apply a 90% imperil to fire or light, which is pretty good. So, you know, you could use them, and that's great. I don't personally ever see myself using them. And whenever I say something like that, whenever I make a definitive statement, it's basically how you guarantee that one day I'm going to end up using it. But for now, I'm going to say I don't see myself ever using that. And speaking of his AMOE ability, it does imperil fire and light for 75%, if I remember right, which is, you know, that's pretty good. It's good enough. He's only able to cast it once when he's equipped with a sword and a shield, but I think once you use it once... Oh, wait, no, what does it do? Oh yeah, it enables this other ability that allows you to fill the party's LB. So if you use his chaining skill, you enable this other support ability that allows you to fill the LB gauge for the party, as well as boost fire and light resist, I think by a lot, by like 100%. So that's great. How do you enable his multicast? Oh yeah, it's with his physical cover skill. So if you use his cover skill, then you'll have multicast available to double cast his AMOE chaining. That's what you do. I had forgotten about that. But as you can see, he doesn't have that many things that he can multicast. So, you know, you can if you want to. You can do some breaks here, some provoke here, some LB fill here. And it's not very much LB fill. I think it's like 3 or 4 crystals for himself. And then, of course, there are these 2 blade abilities that damage enemies and then boosts fire or light resistance for allies. So those are something that you can consider if you needed them. That's quite handy. But honestly, I think Galuf's biggest value comes from his Limit Burst, his turn 1 cover and mitigation combo plate skill, and it's probably those 2. Those 2 are probably his best skills by far. Oh, and Entrust. Entrust, Limit Burst, and turn 1 cooldown. Those are the 3 best things about Galuf. The one thing that's also worth mentioning about Sieghard is that with his Earthbound skill, I realized I didn't touch on this. Earthbound is a super handy skill. It kind of coincides with Galuf's ability to imperil and chain. This skill, when enhanced, grants absolute mirror of equity chain frames, and it imperils Earth by 100%. So that is a super high on-demand Earth imperil of 100%. And it goes super well with Sylvie. That's actually who I've found the most use for with it. Sylvie imbues Earth, so if you're like, well, cool, I have an imbuer, but none of my breakers have Earth imperil, you know, where am I going to get that? Sieghard has you covered. That's probably a situation where I would definitely take Sieghard above Galuf, because 100% on-demand Earth imperil from somebody who has draw attacks, that's fantastic. That's really good. If I need fire or light imperils, then Galuf has me covered as well. And he synergizes pretty well with Mira. Like, let's say turn 1, you need, you know, cover and stuff up, so you can't put up imperils with Galuf. You could use Mira's cooldown instead to apply fire and light imperils, and then on subsequent turns you can use Galuf instead. So, as far as the verdict goes, which of the 2 units is better? Honestly, this Limit Burst alone is enough to make Galuf lose, but I'm going to overlook that. I know there's going to be some FF5 fans out there who are like really mad at me for disparaging his LB for some lore reason that I don't understand because I've never played the game. But how can you even compete with this? I mean, come on. Come on. He has a mirror in the back of his shield so that he can look at himself while he's in battle. Like, that's perfect. That's beautiful. You know, so on those grounds alone, I would say that, you know, Sieghard is who I prefer visually. Galuf looks a little bit like a registered sex offender in a black leotard with a pageant sash. So, you know, I'm not in love with the look, but let's put that aside and talk about, you know, who's really better. I think Galuf overall offers more in a practical fight that is very, very powerful. That general mitigation that he can provide is a huge deal. I think that ultimately is what puts him as, you know, the best physical tank in the game. And he stays that way for a long time. However, if you already have Sieghard or you have Enhanced Sieghard, I think the 2 are similar enough that, you know, if you have Sieghard, you don't have to worry about Galuf. Honestly, their kits are so similar, you can get extremely similar value from both of them that, in my opinion, they're virtually interchangeable in that regard. I do like Galuf's Entrust and turn 1 cooldown more. I think those are extremely practical things to be able to use in a battle. But Sieghard can provide your mitigation, he can provide your provoke, he can provide your cover, and he can provide magic cover. So I think that gives him a little bit more flexibility. Galuf, I do think, has a little bit more gearing flexibility in the sense that he has 10% innate evade, so if you're going to go an evade build, it's a little bit easier to do. He also has higher draw attack, so if you want to do a draw attack build, it doesn't require as many equipment slots, so some of those things give him a little bit of flexibility, which is nice. But ultimately, for me, I think Galuf edges out Sieghard just a little bit overall as in terms of his kit. But as far as his looks, I mean, come on, he doesn't even compare. So that pretty much covers my thoughts and opinions regarding Sieghard versus Warrior of Dawn Galuf. Both outstanding tanks. I think either of them can fill the job of the other just fine. So I'd highly recommend that anybody who doesn't have one of these 2 tanks try to get a hold of them. If you have Charlotte, you could probably skip both of them, to be honest, and go for Warrior of Light instead, because he has a different enough supporting kit. But that could be a whole nother discussion for another day. So that pretty much covers it. Galuf versus Sieghard. Let me know what you think of this video down in the comments below, and I'll see everybody in the next video.